Hello, shameless leaders. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend, my speaking colleague, my activist colleague in so many ways, Maria Ross. So Maria has been on the show before. She was one of my very first guests when I had the Shameless Mom Academy. Now she's one of my very first guests as we're bringing guests onto Shameless Leadership, and I just couldn't be more honored to be bringing her to you. She's brilliant. This conversation is fun, uplifting, even in spite of like heavy content, because Maria is someone who is not afraid to dig deep, not afraid to go right to the core and the heart of a matter, and not afraid to find some solutions that can keep us action oriented and energized as we continue to move forward in hard seasons. So with that said, Maria Ross is a speaker, facilitator, author, strategist, and empathy advocate who believes cash flow, creativity, and compassion are not mutually exclusive. She spent decades helping forward-thinking leaders, teams, and brands connect and engage through empathy to accelerate growth. Maria has authored multiple books, including her newest book, The Empathy Dilemma: How Successful Leaders Balance Performance, People, and Personal Boundaries. Her previous book, The Empathy Edge, sparked a movement, and she now hosts the top-rated Empathy Edge podcast, speaking with leaders, changemakers, authors, and activists on how to achieve radical success through empathy. Maria delivers powerful talks and leadership training workshops for companies such as Salesforce, TBWA Worldwide, New York Life, and Christus Health. Maria has delivered dynamic keynotes at venues ranging from TEDx to the New York Times to the 3% Conference. She's also appeared in many prominent media outlets, including MSNBC, NPR, Wisdom from the Top with Guy Raz, Forbes, ABC News, Entrepreneur, and Thrive Global. She lives in Northern California with her husband, her young son, and her American Bully rescue dog, and she serves clients worldwide. So I recorded this episode pretty early into the new year when we were like, Maria and I were laughing ahead of hitting record. We were like, are we going to be allowed to say empathy at work anymore after a while? Like DEI is canceled. Is empathy going to be canceled? So that's actually where we start this conversation. We really dig into like where things are at right now. And we recorded this really unclear around where things would be at the time that this is going live a few months later. So it's interesting to see how we've, found our footing in this current sense of normal, even though it seems very abnormal. So listen in to hear Maria share how to navigate empathy and the balancing of the empathy dilemma, which puts us in a position of needing to figure out how to balance empathy with performance in workplaces. She also digs into what empathy is and what it's not, and which is, I think, helpful. It's like destigmatizes some of the things around empathy where we think it's always really soft. It's not necessarily always really soft. We talk about why empathy is especially challenging in multi-generational workplaces right now. She digs into how to uphold empathy when it feels like it's being canceled while DEI is being canceled. And she talks about her 5 pillars of effective empathetic leadership. This is a juicy conversation, a very real, honest, raw conversation, because that's how Maria and I are. So I know you're going to get a lot out of this. I can't wait for you to tune in. So with all that said, please join me in welcoming Maria to Shameless Leadership. Welcome to Shameless Leadership. I'm your host, Sarah Dean. This show is for women leaders who are committed to advancing both their own leadership and the leadership of those around them. In each episode, I offer practical strategies and inspiring stories to help you become a more confident, compassionate, and curious leader. The truth is, you were born to lead. So let's start now together. Maria, welcome to Shameless Leadership. This is very exciting. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So I have to give our audience a sneak peek behind the scenes. You were one of my very first interviews I did, over 900 episodes on the original show, the Shameless Mom Academy. I think you were literally my second interview. And now I'm finally getting into recording interviews for Shameless Leadership. And here we are. You're right at the top of the list.
I love it. I love helping you launch things. Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. I'm honored. I love being like inaugural, whatever for you. So
fun.
It's great.
So fun. So you and I have had multiple conversations in the past. We've had these conversations on podcast interviews. I've interviewed you twice. You've interviewed me. We've had these conversations on social media. We've had them via email and text, like over and over, around empathy, and also like empathy in these wild and uncertain and unprecedented times, which we've now been saying for way too many years.
Yes.
And it only continues to get more of all of those words.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about the work that you do in empathy and kind of what brought you here? And then we'll dig into the empathy dilemma.
Absolutely. So I started off as a marketing and brand strategist. My company was a brand, it is still a brand consultancy called Red Slice. And numerous things came together in my world to point me in the direction of empathy. Personally, back around 2016, I was very disheartened by the examples of leadership in the news and in the headlines for my, at the time, 2.5-year-old son. And you and I had talked a lot about that actually back in the day.
Mhm.
And I decided to dig into the research and the data to say, no, there's got to be brands and leaders that are winning with empathy. And of course, there was data, there was research out there proving that empathy can help you be a stronger leader. It can create a thriving culture. It can help you have a more engaged and, quite frankly, profitable brand. So
Mhm.
everything from the internal experience to the external experience, it was all goodness. And so I wrote the book, The Empathy Dilemma, that came out in 2019 as the business case for empathy. What is the ROI of empathy, and how do we put it into practice to be a stronger leader or build a better culture or build a better brand? So I had lots of actionable and tactical strategies in that book. And that work led me to doing a lot of leadership workshops, a lot of workshops with HR organizations, customer experience, employee experience, keynotes. I got the chance to do a TEDx talk, like all of these things. So I pivoted my business in about 2023 to really go hard on the empathy work. And so now what I do is I help leading edge, forward thinking companies and teams and leaders who want to achieve radical success with empathy. They want to embrace the both and leadership philosophy that you can be empathetic and competitive. You can be empathetic and high performing. And with the latest book, which is more for the converts than the first book was for the skeptics, the empathy dilemma is about how do you do that? How do you maintain empathy while also being all those other things, while also holding people accountable, protecting your own mental health and your own boundaries, not dipping into people pleasing? Because I truly believe that the narrative we've told ourselves that it has to be either or is hurting us. It's actually stifling innovation. It's stifling our ability to problem solve effectively. It's, destroying people's souls at work to have to
Yeah.
choose between those two things. So we're adults, like we can hold two opposing things to be true at the same time. And that's really that you can balance your people, you can balance performance, and you can balance your own personal boundaries, especially in a post-pandemic world.
I love all that. I think one of the interesting things we're seeing right now, as we're recording this early in 2025, is how disheartening it is that so many organizations are walking away from, very intentionally walking away from canceling certain words, like pulling language
Mm-hmm.
um, around empathy, very specifically around empathy. But what we also see is organizations who are doubling down on it. And because of everything that you just said, that we're
Yeah.
all adults and we can hold space for two things. And it
Yeah.
is possible to be empathetic and results driven. And it's
Yeah.
possible to, use empathy as a tool for performance. And
Yeah.
like, if you can have a little bit of emotional maturity,
Yeah.
any level of
Just a little.
emotional
Just a
intelligence,
little. Yeah.
maybe we can see how these things actually can work together. And then
Mhm.
how, when they do work together, how everybody wins. And that's a
Mhm.
good thing.
Yeah. Well, what we're seeing, none of it is based in data. None of it is based in what actually happens when you create workplaces where people are seen, heard, and valued. This is the challenge. It's all based on fear and politics. So fear being, we have not a lot, there's quite a few leaders and managers who felt like all the progress we made during the pandemic was a blip, was temporary. And they sort of have this attitude of, well, you had your fun being treated like a human. Now it's time to get back to work. And that's, again, not based in data or fact. That is based in fear. That is, I don't know how to lead in this new workplace environment, in this new culture, in this new leadership paradigm. I wasn't taught. It wasn't modeled to me. I don't know how to lead a team unless they're all in front of me and we're inside the same four walls, for example. I
Mhm.
don't know how to trust my team. I don't know how to hire for people that I can trust if they're working remote or they're working hybrid. So they're snapping back to bossism. They're snapping back to what they know out of fear. and out of
Yeah.
fear, and also the inability to want to learn a new skill. And I have empathy for those people, because if you think about it,
Mm.
these leaders, many of these leaders came up in a certain time with a certain paradigm that actually got them to their point of success. And now we're pulling the rug out from under them, even though it's been a trend that's been brewing for years. The pandemic just accelerated it. We're pulling the rug out from under them and saying, no, you need to lead in a different way. You need to actually care about your employees. You need to talk to them about what's going on in the world and society and culture and racism and misogyny, and like, so they don't know what to do, right? So for them, they accommodated, they adapted, they got flexible when they absolutely had to. And now they're feeling like, as we come out of the pandemic, that they don't have to play that game anymore. But really what they're failing to realize is that the expectations of top talent and the expectations of our customers and our clients in the market has changed about what they expect from brands, what they expect from leaders, what they expect from workplace culture. That's not going away. And so they've got to find a way to embrace the new paradigm, upskill where they need to, and understand that emotional intelligence is part of the equation when managing and motivating and inspiring people, is what will get you the results you need to, quite crassly, get your bonus for the quarter. Like, they've got to
Right.
put those two things together.
Yeah. You said something about trust earlier, and an inability to trust teams to do, and specifically in like a remote context. Like if you're not right in
Mm-hmm.
front of me and I'm not telling you exactly what to do and watching you do it, then like I don't trust that it's going to work. And when you mentioned that, this like radar went off for me. I think a lot of that is, it's not just not trusting the employee and not trusting the team. It's not trusting yourself as a leader. I don't trust that I'm a good enough leader that I can give my team what they need to go off and do these things unsupervised and trust them to come back to me.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't have when you're not open to developing new skills in order to learn to trust, to advance your leadership in a way that you can trust yourself to then trust your team, then that's where we see these power struggles, these power plays
Mm-hmm.
happening. And that's when I think that's a lot of what's, how we've gotten so far down
Mm-hmm.
this dirty path.
Yeah.
Again, not in all instances, because in other places we have people doubling down and organizations doubling down.
Right, right.
Can you talk a little bit about, and I think this is a good next piece of the conversation to clear this up, because I think we're seeing this is the undertone of what we're talking about. What is empathy and what is it not?
Yeah. Thank you for that, because I think that's 90% of the problem, is that it's misunderstood. I mean, when we look at surveys that for years were going up, where executives were linking empathetic cultures to financial performance, they did see that there was a place for it. All of a sudden, we're starting to see surveys that say, oh, it has no place in business. And that's because of a misunderstanding of what it is. So empathy is the ability, when you look at it in a work context, right? There's actually a lot of different definitions out there. But when you look at it in a work context, and the the frame that guides my work is that empathy is the ability to see, understand, and where appropriate, feel another person's perspective and use that information to act with compassion. So a couple things there. One, it's not crying on the floor with your employees. It doesn't mean you have to be touchy-feely. It just means you have to be able to see someone else's perspective and understand what they're going through. You can do that whether you're right brain, super creative, super emo. You can do that if you're very left brain and analytical, because you can access empathy. You can access cognitive empathy with your brain or emotional empathy with your heart. Both of those things are ways to gather information about somebody else and then pick a next right step forward. And that's where acting with compassion comes in. So compassion is empathy in action. Now that I understand your point of view and I understand your context, what's my next right move? And it doesn't mean my next right move is give you whatever you want or cave.
Right.
That's people pleasing, that's submission. It
Mm-hmm.
could be the way I deliver the news, the way I handle layoffs for my team, the way that I answer questions or come prepared with answers to the questions that I think ahead of time you might have, the way I maybe give you space to process, or the way I maybe give you some time to think about something before I demand an answer. You know, all of those are ways that we can respond with compassion. So the act of compassion doesn't have to be, I agree with you and I'm doing what you want. Because again, that is people pleasing and that's submission. And that's why we need to understand that it's not about being nice. It's not about caving into unreasonable demands. And it's not even about agreeing with someone. You can have an empathetic conversation. And this is what we've lost the art of in our current world is I can hopefully sit and hear and listen to what you think and your perspective. And I can say, I still don't agree with you, Sarah, but I understand where you're coming from. And I hadn't thought about it that way. And so at least I understand where we could go from here. Maybe now that I understand your context and I'm willing to see your point of view, maybe now I can find some common ground with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've talked about it a bit already, but why is empathy at work so challenging right now?
A lot of things. So it's really funny because, I never meet anybody who says they think it's a bad idea, really. I mean, we're seeing headlines of that, but I've
Right.
never actually met a functioning, successful leader that has ever said that. So why, if we all can agree that this is something that's good for the workplace and good for our culture and good for our people, why is it so hard? Well, number one, it's hard because of generational conflicts. And we've got 5 generations working in the same workplace right now. We've all seen those statistics. But it's not even about stereotypes of each generation. It's about really understanding that different generations have different operating codes. And I got that language from a woman named Anna Lyada, who wrote a book called Unlocking Generational Codes. And it's a fantastic book about really understanding why different generations act and see things the way they do. Now, it's a blanket, right? There's always going to be unique individuals within each generation that sees things differently. But for the most part, a lot of our dysfunction and a lot of our inability to be empathetic is this idea that one generation is right and the other generation is wrong in how they view professional communication, in how they view work ethic, in how they view, going the extra mile, like all of these nebulous things that we make assumptions about based on the generation we're in, right? So that's hard. And the fact that we are inviting more diversity and both of generation, that's actually the second one is diversity. Yes, we need to invite more voices to the table because, again, study after study after study shows that when you have a diverse workforce and a diverse leadership team, you actually can see a problem or a challenge or an opportunity from multiple points of view. So you make a better business decision. This is the thing that's crazy making to me about people politicizing diversity. That's what it means. It just means I get a clearer picture because I have different voices at the table who might see the problem in a completely different way than I see it, right? And so that helps me avoid risk and mitigate risk as a company. That also helps me leverage opportunity. So, but with those differences come misunderstandings. And unless we add empathy into the mix of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're just going to continue to be a bunch of people standing around who don't understand each other. We have to have that willingness to understand and listen and get curious about that other point of view, and then synthesize that information to help us make an informed decision. So that makes it hard. Generational conflicts, diversity, and I would say some of the things that make it hard, which is just outlying behaviors, but people who have learned how to game the system and who are doing what I call weaponizing empathy. So they are using the words, they are using the language, they are holding their HR teams hostage by stating things like my boundaries have been crossed. This is this might be a mental health violation. They're saying, again, these are outliers because there's a lot of valid voices that are saying these same things. But if someone is actually trying to get out of work and game the system and take advantage of you as an empathetic leader, they know the buttons to push. And so it makes it hard for some people to discern, is this a genuine crisis this person is in, or are they just taking advantage of me? And the default is to say, I'm not going to let anyone take advantage of me. So I'm going to close my heart, close my ears. And you know what? This policy applies to everyone at every moment. I don't care what situation you're in. It's just easier.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it gets hard.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much I want to say in there. I was actually on a call recently, and I'm sure you've been on some of these calls. So when I'm looking at my upcoming speaking engagements and how shifts in politics will impact some of my work in 2025, the conversations that I'm in right now are, what words am I allowed to use?
Yep.
And the list of words that you're not allowed to use anymore just keeps getting longer and longer. And I actually had a list that popped up on Instagram. It was Instagram yesterday, where I was like, oh my gosh, I need to like screenshot this, because like it's quite a long list. And in one of the calls that I was on with a government agency recently, they were saying just exactly what you were saying, that if someone has it on their radar that they can cause a scene and they can game the system by saying they felt uncomfortable, and they're aware that there's this list that's now, hundreds of words long, all it takes for a whole program to lose all of its funding is for me to come in as an outside person and use one word. And then one person says, I felt uncomfortable because Sarah said empathy in that meeting. And the whole program gets shut down. And so the stakes are so high, and the opportunity for opportunistic people is now at a level that the level of walking on eggshells, it's really disheartening. But for me, and I think you might be a little bit this way too, it makes me like, I'll just play the game harder. Like,
yeah.
Oh, there's 300 words you don't want me to use. Why don't you give me 500? I'm up for the challenge.
Yeah. I'm going to do an interpretive dance to present my thing. No, and it's, again, that's why it's so crazy making, is because people don't actually understand what these words mean. And they've been told by whatever sources they're getting their information from that these words imply loss of opportunity to you. That's what this is all about. It implies loss of power and loss of opportunity. And to me, what's just mind-boggling is when and I know empathy is caught up in that list as well.
Yeah.
Is that's like saying honesty has no place in the workplace, or ethics.
Like, we are not talking
courage.
about
or whatever.
Kindness
like, it's
is bad.
It's just like, what are we going to be talking like cave people? Like this good, like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and so I really wish these people would take a step back and understand. And I know that many people think, oh, well, they're just going to find ways to coded language, right? That's what we're seeing from the memos being shown to government agencies of, if you try to change a contract into coded language, there will be adverse consequences, right? And you need to tell on people too now. So, what all of it, if we raise above the noise at the weed level, right? If we take the higher view of this, all of these things are meant to catalyze the organization to achieve its mission. That's the whole point of all of these things we're talking about: building emotional intelligence skills, bringing more diversity and inclusion to your organization. Again, the data and the research is there that this is about creating a healthier, more productive, more successful team and organization. So at what point are you, as the ultimate decision maker of this organization, going to say, whoa, I don't want to fall behind. Like, this is actually detrimental to the goal we have here of growing this organization profitably, sustainably into the future. Right. Like, there's going to become a tipping point, and we're starting to see it, where some organizations like a Costco are savvy enough to say, yeah, we're putting our foot down because we know this is good business. Right. And, they can, they're, I mean, they can avoid their shareholders as much as they want, but at some point we have to have leaders who are making smart decisions about the organizations that they lead. And this circus we're in right now is all about politics and all about fear. It's not about actually moving the organization forward. So I guess what I'm saying is leaders have to make a choice, and they have to decide, are they going to be willing to put their foot down to say, my charter is to help this team succeed, or my charter is to help deliver the most value to shareholders. This is the way I'm doing it because it has been proven and we know it works. So why would we disengage from investing in those things if those are things that are actually going to help us grow and succeed?
Absolutely. Can you talk about, you have 5 pillars of effective empathetic leadership. Can you dive into those pillars?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned, when I wrote the first empathy book, The Empathy Edge, that was about the business case for empathy and convincing the skeptics. And this book, The Empathy Dilemma, is really for the converts. It's for the people like you and me who are embracing human-centered leadership, but they just struggle with the balance of, how do I balance empathy with performance, with people's needs, with my own needs, my own mental health, my own personal boundaries. And so this book is based on 5 pillars, like you said, of effective and empathetic leadership. And really those pillars came about because I saw these leaders. I was interviewing hundreds of leaders for my podcast, The Empathy Edge. I was continuing to do research. And I thought to myself, what is the common thread? What is the recipe with these people that enable them to be really strong, high-performing leaders, build amazing, high-performing teams no matter where they are, and still be so approachable and caring and there for their team and supportive and almost effortlessly. Like, we all know a leader like that. I'm sure you're thinking of someone right now, like a leader that you had in your past. You're like, how do they do that? They always seem to have time for you, even when everyone else is stressed. Like, how do they do it? So I was trying to deconstruct the recipe of what is it about all these people. And these were the 5 common threads that I found that they're really strong in. And so I created this more as a framework so that if you are struggling to balance your own empathy, your own people-focused leadership style, and you're experiencing burnout, you're experiencing people walking all over you, you're experiencing a dip in performance, then maybe look to these pillars and assess which one of them is weak, which one of them needs work. And not just for you personally, but your team culture as well. So that's how the pillars came about. So it's kind of a reconstituted recipe from these people of these seem to be the common traits that I see. And we can dive into them when you're ready.
Yeah,
but
please go for it. I'm ready.
Yeah. Okay. So the first one is self-awareness. Second is self-care. The third is clarity. The fourth is decisiveness. And the fifth one is joy. And so when we talk about self-awareness, it's, empathy for others starts with you getting your own house in order, right? You have to be able to have room in your head to be able to take on someone else's perspective without fear or defensiveness. So that's inner work. That's why the first 2 pillars are about you as a leader. Self-awareness. Do I know my strengths? Do I know my blind spots? Do I know my emotional triggers? That's a big one we overlook, right? You can take all the Myers-Briggs you want, but do you know what emotionally triggers you? What words, what type of person, what demands on your time? And also not just for yourself, but does the team understand? Are they self-aware about what do I bring to the interaction? How do I actually show up? Do I realize I'm not the only person in the room? So that's why we always say ego kills empathy. Being able to put your ego aside, no matter what level you are, CEO, chairman of the board, chairperson of the board, you always have more to learn and you always need to have a growth mindset. So there's always, always, always things you could improve upon. Self-care is the second one. And I don't mean like manis and petties and massages, because as my good friend, Jamie Greenwood, who's a women's coach says, that's self-maintenance. That's not self-care. But self-care is really, how do you refill the tank? Because your capacity has to be full to meet someone with empathy. You and I are both moms. Like, we know we're horrible moms when we're hungry and tired, like short fuse.
Yes.
Right. So just apply that to leadership. Like, are you having a did you get into a fender bender that morning? Are you operating on 2 hours sleep? You are not going to be able to show up with empathy for someone else. So how are you refilling your tank? And that could be quiet, restful things like yoga and meditation, but it could also be very active. It could be rock climbing, or it could be knitting, or it could be jogging or training for a marathon. Whatever it is that recharges your tank and lights you up and gets your brain to work in a different way. Mm-hmm. That's really what we're talking about when we talk about self-care. And you can talk about self-care in terms of like for your mind, your body, and your spirit, right? Then clarity is about, as Brene Brown says, clarity is not just kind, it's also empathetic, because people know where they stand. They're clear on expectations and values. They understand what they're accountable for and the role they play in the larger mission of the organization or the team. You cannot hold someone accountable for an expectation that you haven't clearly set. So when I see leaders who are trying to practice empathy and they're struggling with performance being low, we need to look to that clarity pillar. Like, are you guys aligned on expectations? When you have this mission statement or this vision statement or these values, are they just like a pretty poster on the wall? Or do people actually know what those mean and own them? Do you give examples of them in action? Do you use them to make daily decisions? Because this is where my brand work intersects, in that I help organizations build their vision statement, their mission statement, and their values. But they have to be more than one word. Like, it has to be something useful for people. So where's the clarity, and how is that going? Does everyone understand the role they play in this tight-knit little unit, right? Decisiveness, often when we're trying to be empathetic, we put off difficult decisions or difficult conversations because we're trying to spare someone's feelings. And that's where we can't get confused that empathy doesn't mean people are not going to be unhappy or hurt or upset. It means you're being honest with them, but you're being honest with them from a place of kindness and compassion, right? To level them up, not to bring them down. So are you good at synthesizing multiple points of view quickly and making a decision? Are you good about addressing problems or challenges before they fester? Because what happens is, why it's unempathetic is your team is in anxiety, they're in stress, they're in doubt, they don't know which way to go, which way is up. I tell a story in the book about a client I worked with years ago where the CEO was delaying this very important operational decision. And in the name of democracy, in the name of empathy, well, what do you think? What do you think? Constantly. And everyone, to me, admitted, we're done. We actually don't care what decision he makes at this point. We just need a decision. Like, it's making our lives hard for this person not to make a decision. And it was because the leader was looking for a decision that pleased everybody. And they got
so been there.
Have you so been there? Yeah.
I mean, just recently trying to schedule something for a coaching group that I run. And I was like, well, I want to make sure that like everyone's replied to the options. And then like, if everyone can get their first choice. And in the meantime, like days turn into weeks. And there's people who are like, I just need to get something on my calendar. Like, I need to make sure I have childcare. Like, I was the exact same thing. Like, I'm thinking best of intentions here. And then I'm like, oh, but I'm just like making everyone's lives be on hold.
Yes, exactly. And so again, it doesn't mean it's a license to be a dictator, but how can you swiftly synthesize different inputs, right? I have a fun tactical activity in the book that, like, pick something really low stakes, like the location for the next team lunch, and practice, like, everyone get me your things by Tuesday and I will make a decision on Wednesday and we'll go on Friday, right? Someone's going to be unhappy, but but at least if you can be transparent about how you made the decision and that you did ask for input, and also if you can, when you deliver the decision, how you do it in an empathetic way is important. So we have a major strategic initiative, let's say, right? And everyone's weighed in. And Sarah, you had this idea you were really excited about. And I come back to the team and I say, we've made a decision. We're going with this. And Sarah, I know that's not quite what you wanted, but I want to let you know that we actually really thought about your input. It made us see some things in a different way. And it was really valid. But here are the reasons why that's not going to make sense for us right now. But please keep your feedback coming. Please continue to give us great ideas. So that helps you continue to know that you are encouraged to give feedback to future decisions. Versus I just come out of my office and I say, this is what we're doing. Anybody have any questions? I give no transparency for how the decision was made. You don't even know if I've considered your opinion or your perspective. So we got to get better at communicating the decision as well and be transparent about that. And then finally, joy was one I didn't expect. I actually had 4 initially, but then I realized something was missing. Like, it was like the seasonings were not right. Like, and it was just that these effective and empathetic leaders bring an element of joy to the work, an element of levity to the work, even when the work is hard. It doesn't mean we're following our bliss every second. It just means, can people relax? Can they joke around? Can they be themselves? Can you create opportunities for people to develop friendships? Can you create opportunities for people to have a lighter moment? Can you create that environment where everyone can, and I know it's overused, but bring their best selves, bring their true selves to work, even when the work is hard, right? There's still going to be crappy days. There's still going to be, budget reports to fill out. Some people love that. That brings joy to some people, but not to me. But do you create that environment where people feel like they can relax? Because when they can actually engage all of their cognitive skills, all of their executive functions. When they're under fear, when they're under stress, those functions shut down. And now you've got a whole team working with half their brains. Nobody
Yeah.
wants that, right?
Yeah.
So, um, and you don't have to come up with it. This is the thing. You don't have to come up with all that on your own. You can actually invite your team to contribute. Like I always get, well, I'm not really that funny. And it's like, well, you don't have to be, first of all, you don't have to be funny. Like you don't have to force it.
Right.
Second, talk to your team. Like you've got someone who does improv in their spare time on the team. Like make them come up with some fun activities for the team to do. You've got someone who loves to plan events. Have them plan the next offsite or team bonding experience. People want to contribute.
Yeah.
So don't feel as a leader, I would just invite you to not feel pressured that you have to come up with all of this on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. I think that there's just misnomer. And when we go back to like, what is empathy not? And empathy is not necessarily like sitting and living in your feelings all the time. And when we think about how heavy and hard things are right now for so many people and across organizations, I think that it's easy to lose sight of joy. And actually, one of the things I was going to ask you closer to the end of the interview, but I'll just bring it up now. I was going to ask you, like, what's bringing you hope? How are you holding out hope? And I think when we have joy integrated and as an essential component of empathy, but as an essential component of the environment, that's what allows us to have hope when things are hard, whether we're talking about like a hard deadline, a hard problem we're trying to solve, or a hard, heavy world. We have to have some sprinkling of joy in there if we're going to be able to see like, how am I going to get out of bed tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
So can we just extend, not
Yeah.
necessarily to a sixth pillar, but can we connect that to
Yeah.
how can we bring hope right now in seasons where it seems hard to come by? And I think joy might be the bridge.
Yeah, I think hope is a part of joy. I think that, and I think it's even simpler than even I'm saying it or you're saying it. It comes down to when you genuinely enjoy being around people, you want to show up for them.
Yeah.
You want to go back to that place where they are, right? When you don't, it's a slog to get there.
Right.
You want to run out at 5 o'clock. You want to, whatever it is with your particular work situation. So, I mean, it's that simple. Are you creating an environment where people can care about each other or where you give them something to care about because you're actually letting them be who they are beyond their job description?
Yeah.
Are you letting people get to know each other? Again, not everybody has to let it all hang out. We're not saying that that's what it means to bring your full self to work, but can we talk about hobbies? Can we talk about family? Can we talk about be honest and say, I'm having a bad day? Watch out. I'm grumpy bear today. Like, just so you know, in case I bite your head off in a meeting, like, can we have that kind of relationship? And I think it's linked to hope because when you are around people that have your back, you can kind of weather any storm. And not even kind of, you can weather any storm when you know that people have your back. And that's what we mean by creating that environment of joy. It's creating that camaraderie and that connection that it doesn't matter what we're doing, but we're in it together.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've all had jobs. I'm thinking of two specifically for myself right now, where when you drive into the parking lot, your stomach just like starts clenching.
Oh my God.
Your like whole body's like constricted by the time you have your car in park.
Yeah.
Go in. And when you do that, like day after day after day, like that, the toll that it takes when every time you drive into the parking lot, you just feel the knot like tightening up.
Yeah.
And when we, as leaders, when we think about like, what can I do to not even lessen a knot, but to make it that when someone drives into the parking lot, they have something to look forward to. That doesn't mean that things are easy and that we have all the answers and we know what's going to happen and it's all like rainbows and unicorns, but that like, I'm excited to see this person. I'm excited to follow up on this thing. I'm looking forward to seeing the results of whatever. Like that there's something to look forward to rather than this like knot of constriction where it's just like, oh my God, how am I going to get through another day or this season or this whatever?
Yeah, I think that's your definition of hope is something to look forward to, right? Whether it's a person I look forward to seeing every day, whether it's, a work project that I know that I'm going to contribute to and I can add value to, whether it's a big presentation I'm really excited to give. Like, what is that element of hope? And, I've had multiple jobs in my life, and I've met some of my best friends, my ride or dies at my first job out of college on day one. These women are still in my life, right? I have really good friends from a few other jobs that I was in. I met my husband at work. Like, we were friends first. Like, so there is an element of that, of like, can you be with these people when times get tough? And you actually are like, this sucks, but I'm really glad to be here with you. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just want to bring this example up because it's so telling. I did kind of a merry-go-round of tech companies back in 99, 2000, 2001 in the tech bust, the first tech bust, right? Where I worked for a few companies for a very short period of time until they went under or laid people off or whatever. And there was one company I worked for that I should have seen the red flag in the interview process, but I didn't, where I was meeting with someone in the product group and I was interviewing for a marketing director position. And I asked about, this is before it was common to ask about the culture, but I was like, what kind of culture is it here? Because I had just come out of a like stereotypical Silicon Valley, the show, like environment of a startup in downtown San Francisco where we had beer Fridays and it was like in this open space. And we had a really great culture, but not a good business model. So it went under. So I said, what's the culture like here? And this person in product looked at me and said, well, that's why we need you. We're hiring marketing to build our culture. And I'm like, okay. Like, that makes sense. Maybe like, and it was just like soul sucking. Like my first day of work was a scene out of Office Space. Like literally, I kid you not. We all gathered around because it was the CEO's birthday and we were in a conference room. It was just out of Office Space. And all these people were like half-heartedly singing happy birthday to this person that they didn't particularly like because she was one of my most psychologically abusive bosses I've ever had.
Oh my gosh.
And just like no energy in the room, just like absolutely none. And when you look at an environment like that, yes, it's about the people that are there, but it's about the leader that sets the tone. And I mentioned that particular leader was psychologically abusive, right? So that's the culture you're going to get.
Yeah.
And then that's the level of engagement you're going to get. And this again kind of goes back to our like, oh my God, how do people not see the business case, right?
Right.
I was working my butt off at that company, but oh my gosh, how much more would I have been able to give if I knew it was appreciated, if I knew I was seen, if I knew that I was supported? I had absolutely no support in that job and I was floundering. And imagine what would have been possible if I had had
potential.
leaders. Yeah. My direct leader even was like completely checked out, like just didn't talk to us. When you went in her office, she looked like she was annoyed you were there. You couldn't get any information, right? And so, of course, performance follows culture. Like you build a culture like that, or you don't intentionally connect with people and help them feel welcome, help them feel supported. That's the kind of work quality you're going to get. And quite frankly, I did a lot of great things there that I worked very hard to do, but they could have been better.
Yeah.
They might have been more effective if there'd been a support structure and a culture around me that really spoke to seeing me for who I was and also supporting me and upskilling. And not just me, but everyone in that organization. So that's the thing for me. That's like, again, I say that phrase all the time. It's crazy making. Cause I'm like, do you not see how A connects to B, connects to C, connects to revenue at the end of the year? I don't understand how you don't see that equation.
You don't even have to do math to understand.
No, I was not good at math. And so, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Maria, this has been so fun and just really, really helpful and impactful. And so I'm so excited for our listeners to hear this. Can you tell people how you are currently showing up as a shameless leader?
Yes, I'm fighting against the aforementioned backlash that we talked about. And I'm trying to just get my work out into the world, really trying to help people that are leaning into this understand that they're not alone. And especially this year, I'm going to be building a community around human-centered leadership so that we can collectively fight this fight together. And I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm not going to second guess it. I'm not going to sorta, kinda it to existence. Like, we just need to be vocal. We need to be loud, and we need to be talking about these things, which is what is so great about your show, is that, we have to have that forum to be able to reach each other and connect so that we know we're not alone and we don't lose that hope that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it so much. Oh my goodness. Okay. So where can people find you, get the book, have you come into their companies to speak? Tell us all those good things.
All the good things. So the best place to go is just to go to theempathydilemma.com. And that is the book page, but it's on my website. It's a sneaky redirect. So when they get there, they can actually download a free chapter of my book. And then they will also see up at the top the options for speaking, and they can bring me in for a keynote or an employee resource group, or even some coaching circles, some leadership circles. So reach out. I have a podcast, The Empathy Edge, where I talk to leaders and changemakers and social activists and entrepreneurs and people coming at empathy from all different angles. So I hope people will also check that out. And I've got a LinkedIn course called Leading with Empathy. And I'm about to go film another one down in Southern California. So I hope folks will check that out.
And you said it's called Leading with Empathy?
The one I have out now is Leading with Empathy on LinkedIn Learning. And then I have a new one coming out about the balance of empathy and high performance.
So exciting.
To be named later. Yes.
Okay. All right. I will have everything linked up in the show notes. So if people go to sarahdean.com/podcast, you'll see Maria's interview, and then you'll see all the links right over there. Maria, thank you so much for being here. This was so fantastic. I so appreciate the work that you're doing in the world, and that I get to be in the work with you.
Likewise, girl. So we got to band together.
Definitely. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all that you do. Thank you for allowing me to spend time in your ear today. If you liked this episode, be sure to subscribe to this channel. To learn more about my speaking, training, and coaching services, visit sarahdean.com. That's SARADEAN. I would also love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn at sarahdean.com/LinkedIn or on Instagram at sarahdeanspeaks. I love hearing from my listeners. Thank you for showing up for yourself today. I see you, I hear you, and I'm holding space for you today and every single day.